like we've been saying, the Raptors have showcased in preseason that the problems are still quite evident from an offensive standpoint, where the spacing still isn't quite there, the three-point shooting still isn't quite there, the finishing at the rim still isn't quite there. Like, those are the two biggest components of your offense. How well you are going to finish the rim, how good of opportunities to finish the rim you're creating for yourself, how well you're spacing the floor, how well you're shooting the three ball. These are like the most important components of your offense. These are the most highly efficient shots. These are the best shots to take. Three-pointers and shots to the rim. These are the shots you want to create for yourself. And it's still become quite apparent that even through preseason, which isn't everything, but it also isn't nothing, we've still seen with this team that there is a bit of a lack of ability to create those looks. Defensively, there's a lot of very good things that we've seen, and that's going to be the kind of driving force of the team. They're going to be a defensive-first type of team, but you still need to score. And when scoring has been problematic in the past for this team over the last few seasons, there hasn't really been a good go-to sort of answer. But I feel like we are finally in a position where that is absolutely changing with Brandon Ingram, and I think he's very much going under the radar. I think Brandon Ingram has flown a little bit under the radar over the last few seasons. And I think a big reason why is that he's playing with the New Orleans Pelicans, who have struggled in most of those seasons. They haven't had a good record in most of those seasons. And he's playing in a very competitive Western Conference. I think he's flown under the radar, and he's really played some all-star caliber ball over the last few seasons. Definitely, like, Brandon Ingram's definitely a player who is too good to have only made one all-star appearance, I think, in his career. I've thought about that for a while, and it's becoming even more glaring now playing with the Raptors. Like, it is just so refreshing to watch this Toronto Raptors team in the games with Brandon Ingram. And it's just so refreshing to have this style of player on the team. One that's just going to get his shots up, get his shots, and he's going to make them. He's been pretty efficient for the Raptors in preseason in his 2 games he's played so far. And just a style of play looks like he hasn't missed a beat after the lengthy absence due to injury. That was one of my big questions coming into the preseason, was how is Brandon Ingram going to look? Is he going to look healthy? Is he going to look ready to jump into this new team? Is he going to look like a seamless fit? Is it going to be streamlined in? All these questions about Brandon Ingram. And all of them have been answered very well by him so far. He doesn't look like the injury has hampered him in any way whatsoever. He's very much looked like he's fit in with this team very well. He looked like he fit in very well from the team right from the jump, right when they traded for him, and he was just, we heard him in media availability. We saw him with the guys on the bench in practices and stuff. It just looks like it's been great overall from Brandon Ingram. And the style of play, like, we've seen so many pockets where the Raptors are just unable to generate offense, unable to generate points. And I think a lot of those problematic areas are going to be alleviated this season, like I said, with Brandon Ingram's ability to get up shots and knock them down. Like, having a true bucket getter sort of figure for the team has been great. And like I said, I feel like he has gone tremendously under the radar as of late. I know that there are injury concerns with the player, and you have to keep that in consideration, absolutely. But he's only 28 years old. He already turned, his birthday is September, so he's already turned 28 this year. We have him through his prime years with the Raptors. He's playing in a weaker Eastern Conference right now. I'd be a little bit disappointed at this point if there wasn't an all-star appearance on the horizon for him in the next couple of seasons. The Raptors will have to have a decent record for him to do that, but this is definitely an all-star caliber player the Raptors have gotten here, and they virtually traded away very little to make it happen. Like, they traded away, yes, a first-round pick. It was an Indiana pick for 2026. Granted, Indiana's injuries maybe have made that pick a little bit more valuable. That's not a very valuable first-round pick. That's going to be probably in the 15 to 20 range, I think, and I think that's being nice. It'll probably be more like 17, 18 to 23, but They gave away that alongside expiring salaries of guys they didn't want, like Kelly Olynyk and Bruce Brown. Like the Raptors really did not give up much in order to acquire Brandon Ingram. And sure, they had to shell out a pretty penny in the offseason to get him, but $40 million to me felt like what Brandon Ingram should be getting. I thought like I said, this is a guy I had a lot of respect for. I thought he was even a max contract caliber player. The Raptors came under that. That seemed pretty good to me. Kind of made me look foolish when even Brandon Ingram's own agency essentially said the Raptors overpaid for him and nobody else would have paid him that much. But I feel really confident and comfortable having Brandon Ingram on this team. And I think there is a tremendous amount of talent there. And I think in this status of the current Eastern Conference, he is going to be such a good player for the Raptors. And as much as he's not like who the centerpiece or maybe even the best player on the team, that is the number one player for your offense that you need to work around, because it's and I know it's only 2 games, but it is obvious from those 2 games in preseason that this guy can play. He's averaged 20 points in preseason, 2 games, so averages are what they are for 2 games. But he's at 20 points, 48% shooting from the field, 60% from 3, averaged 5 attempts from 3 in the 2 games, 2.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds. This is very obviously a tremendously skilled player who is doing this in just 23 minutes per game. Like, if we're scaling that up, like, this is absolutely a player capable of comfortably averaging 22 plus points, maybe even more for the Raptors. And that's just like super exciting to have. Foil in the chat says Ingram could be All-NBA third team this year. That isn't crazy to say. I don't think so either. I don't think he will get there. I think the Raptors record will have something to do with that. But it's not crazy to say he has the ability to do that. Phil Gabb says BI is our run stopper like Kawhi was. I completely agree. Like, those cold streaks, they're still going to be present for the Raptors, but I think they're going to be less often occurred because you have him who's able to get you out of that jam and get a bucket. And you can stick the ball in his hand and say, all right, save us. Get a bucket for us here. Nan in the chat says he's definitely got All-NBA, All-Star potential, but that depends on how Scotty plays. And we'll touch on that maybe a little bit later on in the stream as well, because Brandon Ingram has looked fine. I wouldn't say Scotty Barnes has, but Brandon Ingram looks like he's able to shape his game to whatever's around him, and he's been very open about his willingness to do that in media availability as well. Really feels like he's aged well as an NBA player. I think that this is a fantastic player for the Raptors to have, and I think that it is absolutely something that the NBA needs to stop sleeping on. You got to stop sleeping on Brandon Ingram. At this point, it feels like his stock is extremely low. I'd be buying here. I feel like we are at the low point right now of the Brandon Ingram stock. I would be buying up that stock. I expect to see a very positive season for the player, and that is going to be, from a fan standpoint, somebody who's watching like every game, that's going to be extraordinarily pleasing on the eye, and it can only help the Raptors in their push to try and get to a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference this season. It is possible, and if it's going to happen, it's going to be largely, I think, on the shoulders of Brandon Ingram's offensive play.